So the question was, where was love reaching out to me, love and truth, that maybe I missed it? For some of you, maybe this was the first time you've ever done anything like this. And so I hope you had a cool experience. There's no right or wrong. Even I was speaking with somebody who said they didn't get a sense of anything yet. If this is a new way of thinking for you, it might take a little bit of time, but that doesn't mean you got it wrong. Just stay with it. Just stay with it. So I'd love to hear just briefly anybody's experience of what they sensed. Fawn.
I just had a really short time, so I had to get it quick. But my mom was mentally ill, and my parents divorced when I was 10 months old. And I saw that her having custody was God loving me. And it was preparation for my calling, being in a very restricted, very difficult childhood. I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't go to movies. I couldn't go to anybody's house. So I read hundreds of books as a kid. But it was preparation to enlarge capacity for my eventual calling. So.
Beautiful. Exactly what we're talking about. Great. Who else? Somebody else. Yes, Jim.
So when I was in the fifth grade, my mom had won a trip to New York, and she took me to my grandmother's house to have her watch me for a couple weeks. And then 2 weeks went by, and then 3 weeks went by, and then 4 weeks went by. And then on the fifth week, she showed up with more clothes. And then I realized I was never going to go back and live with my mom again. And all these years, I've always thought, well, she just wanted to live her own life. And then I realized that while I was taking a walk out there, I realized that I had talked to my mom later on in life and stuff, and she told me that her parents raising her never spoke to her. In the short time I lived with her mom and dad, she said they talked to me more in that short period of time than in her whole life. So I thought, my mom didn't even know how to be a mom. And then being divorced from my dad, she didn't even have a husband to raise this kid. And I realized she took me to my grandmother's house because she knew my grandmother could love me and care for me and raise me and teach me Spanish and all those things that I use today. So, yeah.
How does that make you feel right now?
I'm like, it makes me feel like I understand my mom. She's passed away in 2013, but I understand why she did. It makes me happy that I know my mom actually cared for me in that way. I knew my mom loved me, but that really showed me how much she really, really cared that I was taken care of, because she knows she couldn't, Yeah.
And so it sounds like it evoked a feeling of compassion then towards her.
Oh, yeah.
You receive it, and then you're able to give it away. Yeah. Yeah. How about somebody else? Thank you, Jim. LV.
So these guys know this, but one of the most painful moments for me, and I've known this, but today brought another component that I honestly didn't expect. 8th grade, came home, saw my dad and mom. My mom was crying, and she worked full time. Dad didn't. He was holding her. She was concerned about money. We didn't have a lot of money. And she was sad about not having finances to support the family, and Dad was just holding her. My dad didn't do anything. He didn't work, didn't clean the house, didn't help. And he kept telling her, Sally, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. And he was holding her, and it was compassionate and tender. But I got angry because I saw that my dad wasn't doing anything to help. And so I was 12, 13. And I called our first family meeting. I said, that's it. My brother's name is DR. I know, don't. I said, DR, get upstairs, and Mom and Dad, get in the living room. And I said, why is this happening? Your mom's crying because we don't have money. Why aren't you helping? And he was married before with four boys with his previous marriage. And he said, LV, I've lived my life and I've raised my family. And I said, then why did you have kids again if you weren't going to take care of them? And I stormed out. And that was a crushing moment for me when the hero of my world, my dad, who was my coach and playmate, because he didn't work. I came home and I'd do everything with Dad, throw the ball, hang out, play. But in that moment, it shattered. And I've always known that was a source of a lot of anger for me. But the question about what is love saying in that moment, I wasn't expecting that. And I just felt like, and I gotta continue to bake this a little bit more, but I felt like I heard the Lord today say, LV, I understand, and I've got you. Will you trust me? The message I heard from that was, no one else is going to do anything. I have to. And if no one else does, then we're under major threat. So I've got to step in. There was a space of compassion and connection to believe that it's not up to me. There's something else that I can appeal to. Love, Jesus, God, whatever you want to say. There's something else that I can surrender to and trust.
Beautiful. Yeah. Deep down inside, then, what would you say? We talked, earlier about negative emotions, but what's the positive emotion that kind of sets in from that?
Yeah, right now it's connection, it's love.
Yeah. Good. Receive it deeply, everybody, what you're sensing. Let's have one more. Ryan.
So I was reminded, actually it was yesterday when Jamie was talking. Here, I'll stand. And the memory of like when I was 9 years old, I was a really good athlete as a kid. And I was put from this place of like being a great athlete, having fun with friends, to now I have to compete and be the best. And it kind of, when I was like 9 years old, I lived in Russia, moved back to the States, and that's when everything changed. When I became a competitive athlete, I couldn't enjoy anymore. And I was just reminded from Donna's question, where did I miss out on love? And it was pretty much the idea that there was one specific game where, I don't know who's athletes here, but I was playing in field and had an error, one inning, and then somebody hit a ball to me again, had another error, and then the same inning had a third one, which confirmed that like I am a screw up. It was like that little boy was like, all right, I'm done. And love was like, hey, in the place that you were meant to just enjoy, you made a performance, or life made a performance and made it become this thing. And I felt permission for the first time to see it in that way, which felt really freeing to me. The positive feeling I feel now is like, okay. And I felt like there was another question that came to mind, which helps me, is like, okay, what's the next question then? And it was like, okay, well, what now? Am I making a performance or a place of possible failure that's just I'm meant to enjoy? And I felt like it was my career, entertainment, like everything that I think I need to be great at. It was just like, no, you're actually meant to enjoy. You're meant to enjoy because you can live from that place of like, I'm a kid. I can be free again. Yeah.
Great. Fabulous. We did the same exercise recently with a group of young women, entrepreneurs and new in business. And one of the gals was from a really large family. She had 7 or 8 siblings. And she was crying, telling, because she used to hide in the bathroom. She would lock herself in the bathroom. She loved to read, and she never could have a quiet place to read because there were so many people in the family. And she would lock herself in the bathroom, and she always felt like she was hiding, and she would get in trouble if it was found out. And that is the memory that she went to. And it was similar to what Fawn had said, that no, this was a creative space for her to be alone and to come into a sense of who she really was. And it was created, there was a design for her to be in this space, to be able to learn and to be able to be herself away from what all the demands of a big family as an older sibling. Anyway, it was really cool. I had an unexpected thing come to me. When I was a child, my favorite movie was The Sound of Music. I was 5 years old when it hit theaters. Remember, you young people, this is before the age of VCRs and DVDs and live streaming on the internet. And so if you saw a movie and you wanted to see it again, you had to wait for it to come back to the theater a year later. And I saw that movie 9 times in the theater. Every year it would come back before modern technology made it more accessible. And I was reminded of that right when I was asking y'all the question, and I was kind of dismissing it. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. If this is coming to my mind, I need to focus on it. And it was the idea of recognizing the identity transformation that Maria went through, from being this nun to realizing she was supposed to be the mother of this big family. And that she, in her own transformation, she transformed that whole family, especially the husband. Remember, he was this mean commander, this disciplinarian, and he turned into mush in her presence and became very relational with his children. And it was just like, that was true love and truth speaking into the formation of my identity. And so I love that. That was a real warm, gushy feeling for me. So I want to get really practical with you. So let's dive into this and try to get to it before lunch. Try to bring some of these bigger concepts we've been talking about yesterday and this morning together. So remember, we said what connects all humans? We would love to say love connects us all, but it doesn't really connect us all because we live in that scarcity economy. What connects us all? Pain and fear, fear of failing, fear of losing, fear of not belonging, fear of not being accepted, fear of not being good enough. You could all write this list. Fear of missing out, FOMO, fear of growing old, fear of being irrelevant, fear of time flying by and I'm not going to get to do what I want to do, fear of being alone, fear of being poor, fear of never getting free of fill in the blank. I'm afraid I will never be free. What's the thing in the middle of the night? Sometimes you wake up, if I could just get rid of this feeling, fear of never being free of what? So just a tiny little brain science here. We have a part of our brain that's deep in the back called the reptilian brain. And we have neural pathways that send signals from different part of our brain to our conscious mind so that we can function in the world. And from this reptilian brain is where we have instinct for survival. And so with that instinct for survival comes 2 mechanisms we're all very familiar with: fight or flight, and I want to add in another one. I call them the F words: fight, flight, or freeze. Fight, flight, or freeze. And when we are living from this reptilian brain, we live in a lot of fear. And it forms actual neural pathways then to the front of our brain where our conscious mind is. And we want to operate from a sound mind. We want to be rooted and grounded in truth and love and not rooted and grounded in fear. When we're rooted and grounded in fear, we are prisoners of our own mind. When we're rooted and grounded in love, we can act in freedom. When we're rooted and grounded in fear, fight, flight, or freeze in every situation, we're reacting to a situation which usually involves people, and we respond in kind. So if you're angry at me, my fight mechanism says, well, get angry back at you, right? It's this energy of anger that's being exchanged. Or I react in fear and I run away and I'm never going to talk to him again. Separation. Or I freeze and I don't know what to do. And then if you're like me, who had a sibling or a bullying classmate, I'm like, I feel so stupid. And I just freeze up and go inside myself. And then I go home and I'm like, why didn't I say this? Why didn't I say that? Why didn't I defend myself? And then a sense of shame comes over me because I feel I'm not enough. I'm not enough. So the interesting thing is that your brain is like 2 things: Velcro or Teflon. Now, interestingly enough, the Velcro part of your brain attracts fear. When you are in that fight, flight, freeze mode because of fear, it sticks to you like Velcro. It sticks to your mind like Velcro. This is so common. If you are in a situation where you're terrified, think of maybe fear of flying, fear of heights, fear of noisy places, whatever it is. It's really hard to remember the good experiences you had on an airplane because everybody in this room is sitting here. So if you're afraid of flying and you fly, what are you afraid of? Because you're sitting here, right? You're safe. But that fear sticks all the what ifs. Your brain can't distinguish between reality and imaginations. If you imagine something fearful, how do you feel in your body? Like I could ask you, I don't want to ask you, but I could ask you to think of a scary situation. You start feeling it, like Jamie said, in your gut, in your nervous system, in your heart. You start feeling that, and it reinforces that negative neural pathway. Here's the good news. We can undo that Velcro because whatever is good and whatever is pure and whatever is truthful and what's lovely, these things slide off your brain like Teflon. That part of your brain is like Teflon, and I can't explain it. It's just what science has proved. The good news is you can make it stick. You can make it stick. You just have to focus on the good, beautiful, true, lovely thing for at least 5 hours. No, listen to me, 15 seconds. Okay, so when things are beautiful, focus on it. Live in the present moment. We live such busy lives that we're always future projecting. I have a friend that calls it future tripping. We're always thinking about the next thing we have to do. Or we go back to the past and we're like, oh, this happened before and I don't want to repeat this mistake. And it's learning. Part of the exercise we did outside is just learning to be present and to receive and to meditate on what is good and what is love and what is truth, because then that informs your thinking and will stick to your brain. It's retraining that Teflon part so it doesn't slide off. And when we experience those good things and we focus on it for just a few minutes, it creates a neural pathway that goes to your conscious mind. And so you can respond in kind. You can respond in love. So sorry, Jim, when you get mad at me, sorry, I'm using your name, you get mad at me about something, I am not reacting to your anger. I can be, wait a minute, have compassion on you, and then respond from a place of peace, a place of freedom, a place of love. Your anger doesn't define me or dictate my reaction. What defines me is the truth of who I am, and then I can respond to you in love. And the more you do this, this neural pathway is being reformed in your brain. This is called neuroplasticity. Your brain can change. And so it's so important to develop a daily practice where you are some kind of spiritual practice. If you're a religious person, you can incorporate it in with your religious practice. If religion, like for some of us, has been damaging even or hasn't met that deep spiritual need, you can develop a daily practice of meditation and focusing on the good and the beauty. And this retrains your brain so that you see things optimistically and positively and in this energy flow of love, receiving it and giving it, receiving and giving it. Okay, so if we don't do that, then fear becomes normal, and we are the proverbial frog in boiling water. You all know that story, and we don't even realize it. Remember what I said earlier? We have a choice, and we need to stop, especially in stressful situations. There's an adrenaline flow when we're in states of high anxiety and high stress, and we get addicted to it. We become addicted to the drama. But you know what? It affects your body and it is not healthy for you. And we need to become addicted to peace and freedom and calm and rest, and then respond to situations from that. Having the choice. No, I don't have to be this way. Just because my dad was angry and anger runs in my family does not mean I'm an angry person. I have a choice about who I am, and I don't have to be a slave to what came before me or to what other people say about me. So a result of living in this fight, flight, or freeze, if we're not taking the time to redevelop those brain pathways, which we're going to talk about how to do in a second, is that you stop operating, as Jamie talked about a little bit yesterday, in self-promotion and self-protection. Again, Jim gets mad at me, say I work for him, he gets mad at me about something. What do I immediately do? What do you immediately do? Yeah, I defend myself. I start justifying my actions. The police example Jamie gave earlier, we start justifying why we were speeding. It doesn't matter that I'm putting myself and other people in danger. I start justifying. It's that entitlement. Well, I have the right to get to my doctor's appointment on time because I'm running late. We start justifying and defending. And this is self-protection. And we're promoting our own personal agenda about things. So I want to just stop for a second, and I want you to think, instead of just talking about these ideas, I want you to think, and I'm not going to ask you to say it out loud, but I want you to think about a recent situation where you were promoting yourself or protecting yourself. Because think about someone else doing that to you, pontificating about all their accomplishments because they want you to find them worthy or like them. You kind of just, all right, we know. And so I want you to really think about where you might be doing that, because that means you're living from that reptilian brain of fear, of the scarcity model. I'm not enough, so I have to prove that I am enough. Or you're going to hurt me, so I have to somehow protect myself by telling you things that I don't need to tell you, that don't build a relationship but actually cause more separation. So just take a minute. I'm going to stop talking, and I want you to actually think about where you're doing that. We all do it. We all do it. We all try to show people we're good enough. Let's just think about that for a minute. So this is a big indicator of where you're living in a false self. And I want to say something. The false self is not necessarily bad. It's what develops in childhood. It's how we have coping mechanisms to deal with pain and trauma in childhood. But there comes a point in life where you don't need that any longer. And we can lay it aside and we can gently say, thank you, but I think I got it now. I think I get it now. And so the false self, I don't want you to feel like it's a bad part of you. And sometimes we call it the imposter self. Sometimes we call it the shadow self. Some people refer to it as the ego. But all of it is covering up the true you. I like that idea of the imposter self or the shadow self, because it's not the opposite of who you were created and designed to be at this point in time on the planet for the contribution that only you can bring. It's not that it's the opposite of that, but it's the shadow of it. It's like an eclipse. It's not the full you. And I want to help the full you come out in all its brightness and bring light and joy and life to your world, to your spheres of influence. So the false self, the shadow self, Jamie and I like to jokingly say, your roommate, what's your roommate saying to you? Okay, my roommate, you can be quiet now. I got it. So I want to give you some concrete definitions. Here is a kind of a definition I put together from a lot of different sources about that shadow self, imposter self. And it's pretty simple, and I think it'll make sense. The definition is the imposter self are really just conditioned thought patterns that constantly inform your state of being in a negative way. Conditioned thought patterns that constantly inform your state of being in a negative way. It's a defense mechanism from vulnerability. You're protecting and promoting because there's a fear there that if the real you comes out, you'll be rejected or unaccepted. And it's false. It's a false idea. So where does this come from? This comes from our whole life is based on memories. Everything about you today is based on all the experiences of your life. And often, especially if you had a happy childhood and you didn't, a lot of us experienced hideous trauma. I recognize that. But a lot of us didn't experience terrible trauma. But the things you tend to remember, a lot of people say, I don't really remember anything. If you had a happy childhood and you had a lot of structure and your days were similar, they tend to all run in and you don't have a lot of outstanding memories. But the things that do stand out to us, remember what sticks like Velcro? The fear, the negative stuff. And so we tend to remember the really negative things, and then that informs this false self. So we encounter trauma in our childhood, and in that trauma, we take on a belief system. My parents don't love me. One of the parents abandons the family. My dad doesn't love me, or my mom doesn't love me. And we take on a belief system. Just like Jim said, maybe the very best thing for you was done out of love, but you perceived it in a different way. You take on a belief system. And from that belief system, you form an identity. Oh, my mom doesn't love me. I must be unlovable. Then in the false self, you start living in self-protection, self-promotion, because that makes you feel horrible. So you experience trauma, you take on a belief system. From that belief system, you form an identity. And it's all based on perception of what was happening to you. Now listen, perception can be true, but the truth may not be the perception. And that's why it's so important to go back and say, what was true in this memory? What was true in this negative memory? So characteristics, I'm going to read off just a long list here, and you can come up here and take a shot of it from your phone if you want. But characteristics are indications that you're living more in a false self, or the false self is covering the brightness like an eclipse of who you are. is that you feel all those not enoughs. You feel it more than you wish you felt it. And then you start protecting yourself from it and promoting yourself to try to make yourself feel better. But only an experience with the truth can set you free, not how hard you work to overcome. And so it's a constant sense of feeling I'm not good enough, or maybe I'm never good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not fit enough, muscular enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not lovable enough. This is because the false self is in the habit of always comparing. We're always comparing, and then we compete. This is a huge, I'm a competitive person. This is a little bit of an indication that you are in the false self. Okay? I'm not talking about competition necessarily in like sports where there's a healthy competition. I'm talking about with your peer at work. You're competing with them. You're not for them. You're against them because you want to get the promotion. There's plenty to go around for everyone, that generous economy. Then we get in a keep up, when we're in that comparison and competition, we get in the keep up with the Joneses mentality. So let's take just 2 minutes, and I want you to think, especially in your spheres of influence, like with your family, with your coworkers, where do you feel like you're not enough and you're competing? Where do you feel jealous of somebody else's success? You hear about somebody getting a promotion or getting a big advancement in their life somehow, and you feel jealous. This is the false self. This is a scarcity model, like there's not enough to go around. So just think about it. I really want you to think. I don't want this to be read a book on riding a bike day. I want you to get on the bike and ride it today. So let's think deeply. So just jot down where you feel that sense of competing with others for things like jobs or recognition, or where you're always comparing yourself. Okay, let's keep going. Another indication of the false self is a strong sense of desiring approval from other people. You just want to be noticed. You want your boss to affirm you. You want people in your family to notice what you do for them. This strong desire for approval. Think for a minute. Are you really deep down inside desiring that? I was in contract negotiations to teach some of this to a group of people, and the head of the company was talking to me, and I said, I have these videos I want to show, and he said, no, I don't want you to show the videos. I want you to teach it. And I was like so flattered. Oh, you think I'm better than like the gurus that I learned from, and you want me to teach it? And he was like, yes, I want you to teach it. And in my mind, I'm like, nope, I'm showing the videos. I can't teach it as well as the masters who are on the video. But he kept saying, I want you to teach it. I want you to teach it. And I was just eating up that approval. I mean, I was drinking it like, a person in the desert, and this water fountain was suddenly on me. But it was the false self that was drinking it. I loved that he was saying that, but I knew I couldn't teach it. I wanted the best for the group, and I knew I couldn't teach it as well as the videos were going to teach it. But I just kept, Okay, okay. And I was just lying. I mean, I was outright lying, saying, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it the way you want me to do it. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm showing the videos. I'm lying right now to him because I know I'm going to show the videos. And my roommate was going crazy. You're lying. You're lying to the head of this company. You know you're not going to do that. And I walked away from that and I'm like, whoa, what was happening there? And as I took the time to think about it, I realized I loved that approval. Listen to who it was from. An older man in an authoritative position over me. Whoa. I wanted it was him. I wanted approval from that older man in an authoritative position. And then I was just like, what do I need to know about that? This was on a walk. I was taking a walk. What do I need to know about that? You never felt like your dad approved of you. So you're looking for older people in authority to give you a sense of affirmation and approval. Whoa. Then I started thinking through, things with my dad. This is deep stuff. What do I need to know about that? And then I got this sense, sort of like what LV was talking about, what Jim was talking about, just this overwhelming feeling of this. You're enough. You're enough. You are already, the moment you were born, you were already approved of. You came into existence good and worthy and valuable for this unique moment and time that you live, and you are approved of. And so you know what I did? The next day, I went to that man's office and said, I was lying to you. I cannot do it as well as you think I can do it. And for your people to learn the most, I need to show these videos. And I apologize for lying. And did he get mad at me? What does the fight, flight, or freeze say? Protect yourself, protect yourself. No, he was floored that I came in and told the truth. Because what sets you free? Truth. And we're so afraid of it. We're so afraid that it's going to burn us. But it's the light that liberates us. Truth sets us free. That's what I'm talking about. If we don't take the time to think deeply about those things, that false self is just making deeper and deeper pathways in your brain, and you start operating out of it more and more. So it's important to look at it. So that strong drive to be noticed, to get approval, not being set and free and peaceful in who you really are in yourself. So sometimes we act out and do things to get notice for that approval, or we feel so disapproved of that we hide because we want to be ignored, because we don't want to feel. It goes both ways. It goes opposite ways. The false self, sometimes we're overshadowed by past regret, resulting in guilt and shame, and that's always in the background. That's that not good enough, that shame and guilt. Here's a big one that's an indication of the false self, is that we're always striving to imitate others. We see other people that we want to be like, and we try to imitate them. The false self imitates to fit in. The true self can simply be in a peaceful state because the true self knows it belongs. It always belongs. Think for a minute. Who are you trying to imitate? It's great I hope you're learning from me, but don't imitate me. This is my identity. You have your own, and you have your own people that you're going to influence in truth. The true self belongs. The false self can be exhausting because it's constantly recreating itself to meet others' expectations. That's that need for approval in different situations. And what do they need? What do I need to know about them? We're always recreating ourselves so we fit in or meet the expectations of other people's. We let other people define who we are, to define our inherent worth and value. And no person can do that. No person can do that. Only truth and love can define your inherent worth and value. The false self looks inside of itself to become its own source. If you take a computer and all of the knowledge and all of the information that we can get from that little screen, now we can do it from a phone. But back in the day when you had to take a cord from your computer and plug it in, before wireless, you had to plug it in to get the internet. The internet is like this unending source of information, right? It's like if you took that cord, unplugged it from the unending source, and plugged it into the data port, and the only thing the computer had was what was already in it. That was its only source of knowledge. The false self, your only source of knowledge, you're closed-minded, is what you already have. The true self is open, like Jamie said yesterday, open to new ideas, open to change, open to see, where am I off track somewhere? What do I need to know? Always longing for more. There's more, not in a negative way, in a beautiful way. Always willing to change. The false self reacts to other people in anger and fear. We talked about that. The true self will respond in love and peace without the need to compete. The false self is never a victim. The false self never has a victim mentality. We hear these amazing stories of, people in prison or people in a prison camp, and they helped other people. So many stories of this when you read about the Holocaust, because even in those kind of horrible conditions where you have no physical way out, you are not a victim. Nobody can tell you what to think. Nobody can tell you what to feel. And deep inside, there's hope and there's healing. That's what the true self is. Elvie?
Sorry, I thought I heard you say the false self is never a victim. The true self is never a victim?
Yeah, sorry. The
Okay.
true self is never a victim. The false
Thank
self
you.
will live in the victim mentality. And maybe tonight, the Night of Stories, Jamie will tell a couple of these stories. We've been able to help a lot of refugees, and it was just helping them figure out their identity. You are the hero of the story. You need people to help guide you. But you have everything you need to become who you were created to be, and get in a community where you can discover what that is. And the refugee people that we have been able to help, whether they were behind the security wall in the West Bank or they're in Greece in a refugee camp, people like this in Jordan in a refugee camp where they had no hope. Now they're PhDs and they're building hospitals, and at 21 they would have said, I will never amount to anything. So hopefully Jamie will tell some of those stories tonight. So finally, the false self needs constant attention and constant propping up, and it can be utterly exhausting, and that's why some of us are so stressed out. So let me give you the definition of the true self and some characteristics of the true self. And this is what I'm talking about when we say identity. First of all, the true self is not your job. It's not your vocation. It's not your role in life. It's not your function. The characteristics of your true self, you bring it to all those things. Okay, you bring it into being a doctor or bring it into being a lawyer. Your true self can go into any vocation and bring hope and joy and light and love and truth. This is Mother Teresa, right? The true self, a good definition, again, just compiled from a lot of different sources, including the dictionary. It's really simple. It's who we experience ourself to be. This is really the definition of identity. Who we experience ourself to be. The quote, I you carry within you, deeply grounded in love. The true self has a constant status of loved, valued, worthwhile. The nature of the true self is peace and freedom. It's not self-generated. LV?
This is really powerful. There was just a dot that connected for me in that moment. Carnegie, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah.
He said the 2 questions that every human asks day in and day out are, am I loved? Am I valuable? Just thought I would
Yeah.
share that. That came
Yeah.
to mind. Thanks.
Yeah, we all want to know. 2 questions we always talk about: where have I come from and where am I going? That's a real indication to help you discern your identity. Identity has to be discovered. It's a gift. No one can just give it to you. A person can't tell you. Information from people is just knowledge in your head. You become your own source. The process of discovering your true identity, it comes from experience and revelation, usually in community. It's that idea of not reading about a bike, but getting on the bike and riding it and experiencing the wind in your face and the freedom and the miracle of balance and movement as it relates to movement. The essence, identity is the essence of your life and being, your true self. Your true self is original. It's timeless. It's nonviolent. It's humble. Your true self cannot be offended. Look at people in history operating in their true self. I just named Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Jesus. These people are operating in their true self and they are unoffendable. That is a life of freedom. The true self doesn't have to prove itself to be powerful because it knows deep inside it is powerful. Quiet humility. It's highly relational. The true self is not about being correct. It's about being connected. The true self is inherently satisfied and overflowing. It's interesting because in all of creation, identity is only a challenge for humans. A tulip knows it's a tulip, and it doesn't try to be anything else, and it's not competing with an oak tree even. And this is, again, boils back down to what makes us human is we have a choice in how we think, and then that thinking informs our doing. And so when we tell the truth and think deeply and experience that mind renewal, then it changes our form. That's what Jamie started yesterday, and we're going to do a little bit more this afternoon. So the true self is discovered in community. It's a gift. And so I want to just do, before we break for lunch, a kind of 5-minute little listening exercise. So I would love for everybody to close your eyes, or you don't have to close your eyes, but I think it helps you focus. And just take a couple of deep breaths. And we've talked a lot about the true self and the false self, and we've written some things down, and I want you just to imagine your favorite place. Just visualize your favorite place. It's the beach, the mountains, a comfy chair in your favorite spot in your house, whatever it is. Just your favorite place where you love to be, where you feel alive, where you feel at rest, where you can feel that creative spirit in all of us. And just really get into it. Notice your surroundings. Notice what it smells like. Notice what it feels like. Where you're sitting or if you're walking. What does that sand feel like between your toes? What does that ocean sound like? What does that favorite pillow feel like? And I want you to just let a visualization come to you of truth, of love. If you could see truth and love in that space, the energy of truth and love, what does it look like? And grab hold of it. Grab hold of it in the visualization, not necessarily with your hands, but if you want to, you can. And just feel its presence, feel its devotion to you, feel its affection for you, feel its kindness towards you. Truth and love are always for you, never against you. Truth, love will never force its way into your life, but it's always right there for you to take hold of. It's your constant companion. You may not recognize it, but that's why we're doing this, so you can recognize it. Now, however you're seeing that, I want you to think of some of these things where you're operating in the false self. And I want you just to hand it to love. Hand it to that presence of truth and love. And if it were actually a thing, maybe the false self feels like a bunch of rocks or whatever it is. I don't want to give you, I want you to figure out what it is. If you could just take it as a thing in your hand and hand it over, set it down. Just hand it over. See what happens to it as you hand it over. This false self, just hand it over. Release it. Open your hands, open your heart, and let it come out of you. Release it. And see what happens to it. Now just take a deep breath. Just breathe out any remnant of it. Now I want you to take a deep breath in and just listen and see with your inner senses, who does truth and love say that you are? Like me screaming out in the car, who am I? Love, who do you say that I am? Who did you create me to be? Receive what you're sensing deep in your spirit. And just like we handed over a visualization of the false self, if we could see what is our true self, if it was a thing we could hold in our hand, if we could see as love sees us, what is the gift of our true identity? What does it look like? If I could see it, if I could hold it. Maybe it's a snapshot. Maybe it's a movie scene. Maybe it's a thing you can hold in your hand. What represents my true identity? Receive that deeply in your being. Receive it deeply in your being. Now ask this question: what else do I need to know to live in the truth of my real identity, my divine, creative, loved identity? What do I need to know to live in the truth of this? We know that gratitude changes our lives. Lots of books on this popular topic. Take a moment and give thanks. Whatever you believe in, the universe is for you. The universe naturally heals itself. Your body naturally knows how to heal. Your spirit knows how to heal. Receive the truth. And just take a minute and give thanks. Be thankful. What in your life is true and timeless? Take a moment and focus on being grateful for that. What fills your heart with peace and love and joy? Take a moment and be grateful for that. You are a co-creator. You are the hero of the story that you are inside of. And as the hero of your story, you can set other people free that are captive. You can live above the cares of the world in this constant flow of generosity and peace and freedom. May you receive it deeply and deeply, more deeply every day. That's it. Take one more minute before we break to write down. Take one more minute before we break for lunch to write down any important images that you saw or sensed, any important words that you received. And then after a minute or two, I'll let the lunch people come give us instructions. That's a new one. So as you're finishing up, I just want to remind everybody that a lot of you are interested in identity transformation for the people you work with or students. But remember, you can't give away what you don't have. I want you to experience riding the bike, and then you will naturally overflow in being able to help other people. So today is really about you experiencing this for yourself before you try to help other people. Does anybody want to share not all your false self and your mess, but just what you did, how you saw it as you released it, and what it was replaced with? I would love to hear that, a few of those testimonies, stories before we go for lunch. I saw my false self as a bag of rocks falling off a cliff, something like this. Anybody?
So mine was kind of interesting. My favorite place is the beach. So that's like my place when someone's threatening me. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm going to be at the beach while you say this, and I just go there. And I was typically, when I'm doing this process, which we do quite often, my concerns are balloons I'm holding in my hand, and I can't receive the situation because my hands are full of old stuff. And so I have to open my hand and let the balloons go in order to take the situation in the present tense. So that's typically what I do. So I'm like moving in that direction. However, as I was thinking about it, it was like I was at the beach and I was, like, what am I doing at the beach? I'm like walking around. I like to walk around. And I have a kite, not balloons. It's funny. It's like I had this sense of, I know it's going to be balloons. And I look at my hand. It's actually a kite. That was weird. And I'm running to get the kite to fly. Like I'm just nonstop. But at the beach, you don't have to run to make a kite fly. And so the image was, why are you running with the kite? It makes it so you can't enjoy the walk. Stake the kite in the ground. It will fly by itself and walk. And it made me think about this one project we're working on where I feel like I'm running trying to get the thing to fly. And the sense was, you don't need to do that. It will fly on its own. Stop dragging it behind you. Just let it fly and just move forward in it. So that was very liberating.
Yeah.
So I went to college in Santa Cruz and was just slack-jawed in awe of redwoods. So I went to Henry Cowell State Park outside of Scotts Valley. As you were telling us, go to your most beautiful place. And then when we were to hand something to Love, I saw all these historical journals of the rainfall of the redwoods and all these like irrigation Miracle-Gro. Like I was the keeper of the redwoods. Like they were all dependent on me to be beautiful. And so I kind of laid them on a downed redwood, and just kind of laid all the journals, all the little rain collection paraphernalia measurement stuff and all that. And then I was like, okay, what do I need to know about this? And I thought of a verse in the Hebrew scriptures. It says, greater your works, they're studied diligently by all those who take delight in them. And I thought, I was made to delight in these redwoods, not dutifully try to protect them. So then I kind of took another step and said, so what am I supposed to know about that? And I heard, I am a redwood. I don't have to do to be impressive. I just am. And that's very freeing for me because I think I always feel inadequate and people perceive me as a strong leader and very competent in various regions, not just locally, but in other nations. But I feel like a total valueless, worthless person. It was just kind of freeing to go, okay, redwoods can just be. I could just be. If I'm a redwood, I don't have to be the diligent, incredible, dutiful, here's the historical record of the rainfall. Okay, are we heading toward drought, and are all those little root systems communicating with each other just right? And so.
Beautiful. Yeah. Anybody else?
I want to share, but I was wondering if you could ask the questions again. Like if you ask the question, then I can tell you what I saw. And then you ask the question, I tell you what I saw.
Melody. It's hard to remember. Yes. You just stand right up here with me. Okay. So what was your favorite place?
The recording studio. And I was listening to the song in all the perfect speakers. So it was you could hear all the pieces of the recording all at once and the best speakers. So everything is around you.
Totally immersed. So when you pictured or visualized your false identities as a thing you were giving away or maybe coming out of your heart or however it was, what did that look like?
So at first it was like these big black dots it's like everything that people think of me or say about me when they see me or listen to music or hear me. And then they turned into like gaping holes. Like if you like hole punch paper, it just goes all the way through. So it wasn't just a dot sitting on top. It was actually like a cannonball hole, like all the way through me. And it was like this idea of that my actual self was being stolen away. Like pieces of my actual self were being stolen everywhere that I had let something that someone thinks of me stick.
Okay. And so then, and where did it go? As you thought about it and you released it, did you see where it went?
I didn't.
Or what happened next?
So what happened next? So then I had this picture of myself, which is actually a reoccurring dream. And I'm like a spinning blue top on the ocean. And all I'm doing is singing. And as I sing, I spin faster and faster and faster. And all the water around me just gets whipped up. And it's this feeling of like the water's not touching me and I have as much space as I want to just spin as fast as I want to. And the water's getting just whipped up around me. And then it was a picture of like a baking mixer with the little spinny mixer guys. And then the truth of it was the faster I let myself spin, it's actually like whipping up air into what's around me. And that like actually me being my whole self that I want to be spinning is whipping up the oxygen in the space around me.
So it's really the air that you breathe. It's the oxygen you breathe. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. How do you feel right now, Melody?
I feel so excited.
Good. Did you get a sense of a name in your identity, or was it just more the image?
Oh, and when we were listening, you said, listen to what is love? What does love say to you about that? Yeah. And I heard song of my song and blood of my blood.
Wow. Beautiful. Yeah, look at her. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. You know, this identity exercise, you have different identities for different seasons in your life, and it's always evolving and changing and growing and being more and more, becomes more and more expansive. And so for different seasons, do this often, and you'll get more and more pieces of the puzzle that is you to be a complete picture. And then this is your gift to the world. This is what brings you ultimate joy and satisfaction in your life. And with that, we will go to lunch.